Hey everybody, today we are going to do a tutorial on how to create the gingerbread cookies on the plate for the holiday season. So in Canvas, if you will take a look on modules, go down to practice exercises, I believe. Gingerbread cookies, you'll find all of the images that you will need, as well as a very quick overview of the steps. And a screenshot here showing you what layers I have and what effects have been applied to them. So you are going to make 3 cookies to place on the plate. You can use any of these shapes. You will need the texture and you will need this plate image to work with. So go ahead and save those. All right, so I'm going to open up Photopea. I'm going to go ahead and open the empty plate. I am also going to open the gingerbread texture. And the cookie shape that I'm going to work with. Okay, so we're going to start with the gingerbread texture. I'm going to go to Edit, scroll all the way down to Define New, and Pattern. And what that's going to do is tell Photopea that you want it to make a pattern out of this that you can access later. Come over here to my empty plate. I'm going to crop it down to just the white area so that I do not have the stock photos information over here on the right-hand side. Enter. All right, and now I'm going to go over here to my gingerbread man image. First thing I'm going to do is separate the gingerbread man form from the white background by choosing the magic wand and clicking inside of the gingerbread man. You'll see the dotted lines going across all the way around the outside. Some of these little white dots might appear. It's not really a big deal. Okay, I'm going to copy, make a new layer, and paste. I am going to go ahead and get rid of this layer because I don't need it. Create a new one that I will rename my background. I'm going to name this one Shape. And on your background layer, I'm going to just paint it white for the sake of visibility. And of course, slide it underneath. All right, so with my shape layer as the active layer, I'm going to come down below the layers panel to the EFF icon here. I'm going to choose pattern overlay, and that will open my pattern options. And I am going to choose this gingerbread pattern right here. Yours will likely default to the orange slices right here, and just clicking that little downward arrow will bring up your other options. So hit OK, and now you can see that the gingerbread pattern or texture has been applied inside of your shape. Okay, let's make a new layer. This one is going to be called Toast. And this is where we will give it those toasted edges. So we need to come up with a selection first. I'm going to do magic wand again, click inside of the gingerbread man, and that will get the shape that I need. Go back to your toast layer. You'll notice that this is still selected, so that's good. That's where we want to apply this paintbrush. I am looking for my paintbrush tool. Here we go. And you're going to come up here to the settings for your paintbrush. Your hardness should be all the way down at 0. You want a very soft edge for this. And take a look at the preview. My size is way too small right now, so I'm going to bump it up considerably. Maybe right about there. Okay. You're going to want to choose a dark brown for this. So I'm going to come down to the oranges. Maybe something along those lines. And maybe like a third of the circle should be on. Click, hold, and drag. And you will see the edges start to turn brownish. Well, brown, not just brownish. And it looks a little bit clumsy and heavy-handed, and right now that's fine because we will do another alteration to it to make it a little bit more integrated, subtle, and realistic looking. Right now we're just kind of putting down the base. Okay. Going back to effects. I want blending options. No, scratch that. I do not want blending options. I'm going up here to blend mode, and I'm going to go down to soft light. And that will change how the toast layer interacts with the shape layer. And more specifically, it's going to soften it so that it's a much more subtle effect there on the edge. All right, Control D for deselect. We're going to create one more new layer. And this one is going to be your first icing color. So really you might have more than one. Come over here to my brush tool, and I do recommend that you create a different layer for each color of icing because generally your different colors are going to be different things. For example, the white icing will become the facial features as well as the kind of like ruffled arm details that you see on gingerbread people. All right, that is not the color I expected. So I will just undo that and come over here to my color picker where I clearly did not reset my color. Okay. Try this again. There we go. Now working with the trackpad and clicking and holding and dragging is going to create a very clumsy and not sophisticated line. However, if you were baking gingerbread cookies and piping icing onto them, it would also create a very clumsy and not sophisticated line. So in this particular case, it's pretty realistic to have just that. I'm going to give him a couple of eyeballs here. Woo! What was that? Let's try that again. It's a very odd thing that my computer is doing right now. Okay, we'll just give him a little grin. So what I want to show you next is, again, back to EFF. We're going to go inner shadow for the white icing layer and watch what happens. Bring open your dialog box and get it out of the way so that you can see. But already you can see a little bit of a shadow on the top right of all of these lines, everything that's on this layer. And I do encourage you to experiment with the effects here, the sliders, to create different values in the spread, the distance, the size, etc. So you get something that you feel like looks, fairly realistic. You don't want it to be, weirdly dark like that so that it doesn't make sense. You don't want it to be too bold and contrasty. You can adjust the opacity. Obviously, you don't want it at too low because then it won't be visible at all, but just enough to give it a little bit of a dimension. All right, I'm going to make a new layer for the gumdrop buttons. And these I will make purple. And I'm going to increase the brush size. That's a little bit big. There we go. Three buttons. Again, I'm going to apply that inner shadow to it. There we go. It's got a nice lighting effect. Hit OK. All right. Now at this point, I don't need my background anymore. I'm going to go ahead and delete that white because when you export it, you're going to export it as a PNG file so that it preserves the transparent background. Remember that that's important because when you go back to your empty plate here and you open in place, It'll bring it in, automatically give you your anchor points to adjust the size and placement, but more importantly, it does not come in with a background, because if it comes in with a white background because you saved it as a JPEG, then you will have to remove that background, and that's more work for you. Okay, so you place your gingerbread man cookie onto your plate. The last thing you're going to do is apply a drop shadow, which in the past we have gone to two-finger click here blending options. You can do that, or you can come back down to EFF again, and it's right there at the bottom. Okay, so that's a little bit dramatic. He's not floating above the plate, so let's play with that a little bit. There we go, that's better. However, one thing I am going to point out is that the light source seems inconsistent, because the shadow on my little like ruffles over here is on the upper right, versus the shadow on the plate is on the lower left. So if I wanted to make that match, I can click and drag here so that I change the angle of the shadow. And it looks a little bit more consistent. I'm also going to lighten it up a little bit. There we go, a little bit more subtle. All right, so this is how you're going to make your individual cookies, how you import them onto your plate. And as you can see on the assignment description, there's an example there. Feel free to get creative with the facial expressions, the clothing, outfits. Obviously, keep it school appropriate, please. And enjoy making your gingerbread cookies.